You think a little sabotage is harmless payback, but revenge is a dangerous game when you don't understand the rules of reality. Today we examine 6 cases where petty jealousy collided with the unforgiving laws of physics, turning minor pranks into inescapable fatalities. This is a cold study of consequence. Never tamper with safety mechanisms. Physics does not forgive ignorance. October 14, 2005, the Grand Theater, Chicago. The air inside is stale, smelling of old velvet and hot tungsten dust. It is the final technical rehearsal for Aerials, a production designed to push the limits of human acrobatics. There is no audience to applaud, only the critical silence of the empty seats. Center stage stands Julian Thorne. He is a 24-year-old prodigy who treats gravity as a suggestion rather than a law. Watching him from the shadows is Elena, his dance partner. She is technically perfect, yet she remains invisible next to him. For 3 years, she has been the frame to his picture, fading into the background while the spotlight worships him. The resentment in her chest has calcified into a cold, hard knot. She does not want to cause physical harm. She only wants to break his ego. She wants to see the golden boy look clumsy. This desire for humiliation is about to collide with the unforgiving reality of physics. The finale involves a drop-catch stunt. Julian is hoisted 5 meters above the stage, then dropped 2 meters in freefall before the cable snaps tight to arrest his descent. It is a violent display of trust in engineering. During a break, Elena approaches the rigging station. Her hands are steady. She targets the heavy-duty carabiner connecting the main line to the harness. She gives the locking nut a single, calculated half-turn to the left. She does not unscrew it completely. She just backs it off so the gate is not fully engaged. Her logic is childishly simple. She believes the loose connection will cause the mechanism to jam, leaving Julian dangling awkwardly a few feet off the ground. She wants to ruin the rehearsal. She is critically unaware of the difference between static weight and dynamic load. The break ends. Julian steps into the harness. The clip snaps shut. It looks secure. He gives Elena a nod of trust. She stares back blankly. The winch engages, lifting him into the darkness above the stage. He reaches the apex, 5 meters above the unyielding oak floor. The music cuts to silence. The operator hits the release. Julian drops. For exactly 0.4 seconds, he is weightless. This is the moment of the shock load. When a falling body is suddenly stopped by a tether, the force exerted on the anchor point multiplies. Julian weighs 75 kilograms, but at the moment the cable snaps tight, the kinetic energy hitting that shackle spikes to nearly 10 times that amount. It is the equivalent of a small car slamming into the metal clip. A properly locked carabiner distributes this force along its strongest axis, but Elena's adjustment has compromised the structural integrity. The impact force hammers directly against the gate mechanism. The threads on the locking nut, barely engaged, strip instantly. The steel gives way. The gate flies open. The hook separates. There is a sharp metallic ping. Julian does not stop. The cable recoils upward, empty. He continues his trajectory. He strikes the stage floor with catastrophic force. The energy that was supposed to be absorbed by the cable is instead transferred entirely into his skeletal structure. The sound is dull and heavy. The sound of biology losing a war against physics. The music kicks back in, triumphant and loud. For a second, the crew thinks it is part of the act. Then they see the stillness. Elena stands in the wings, waiting for him to stand up and look foolish. She waits for the embarrassment. Instead, she gets silence. The empty cable swings back and forth in the spotlight, a pendulum counting down the seconds of a life cut short. The paramedics arrive within minutes, but the trauma is non-survivable. The investigation would later find the stripped threads, a microscopic detail that turned a safety device into a fatal hazard. Elena had intended to break his pride, but because she ignored the immutable laws of acceleration, she broke everything else. August 22, 2011. The coastal waters off Key Largo, Florida. A high-pressure scuba cylinder holds air compressed to 3,000 pounds per square inch. It is a vital mechanical tether designed to keep a human alive in the hostile, oxygen-starved environment of the deep ocean. On the charter boat Sea Drifter, Stephen Fisher is preparing for his second dive. Stephen is a man who wears his wealth like a neon sign. He is loud, confident, and currently lecturing the group about his brand new, top-of-the-line breathing system. He treats the ocean as a backdrop for his ego. Watching him from the bench is Mark, his neighbor and reluctant dive buddy. Mark is a man of modest means. He dives with rented gear that smells of mildew. For years, he has silently swallowed Stephen's condescension. The envy has rotted his patience. He does not want to fatally harm Stephen. The thought never crosses his mind. He simply wants to see the golden boy fail. He wants a disruption, a nuisance. While Stephen is distracted flirting with a dive master, Mark sees his opportunity. The object of his sabotage is the first stage regulator. It is the heavy metal fist that connects the air tank to the hoses. Inside the connection point, there is a small rubber circle called an O-ring. It costs less than 10 cents. It is the only thing preventing the 3,000 pounds of pressure inside the tank from escaping. Mark takes a small pick from his gear bag. With a quick, subtle motion, he presses the tip into the rubber of Stephen's O-ring. He does not slice it through. He creates a deep, jagged abrasion on the inner seal. His logic is driven by petty malice, not physics. He expects a leak. He anticipates that 5 minutes into the dive, bubbles will start hissing from the neck of the tank. It would be a humiliating equipment failure. Mark smiles, hides the tool, and zips his wetsuit. He is critically unaware of the behavior of gases under pressure. And at the surface, the air pressure is 1 atmosphere. The damaged rubber holds the seal. Stephen checks his gauge, sees a full tank, and gives the OK sign. They step off the platform. The water closes over their heads. They begin the descent into the silent, weightless world below. 10 meters, the pressure doubles. 20 meters, the pressure triples. At 30 meters, roughly 100 feet down, the ocean is pressing against every square inch of their equipment with 60 pounds of force. The air inside the tank is fighting to escape with the force of a freight train. The damaged O-ring is now the weak link. For 10 minutes, the dive is perfect. Stephen glides over the reef, oblivious to the ticking time bomb on his back. Then he turns his head to look at a moray eel. The slight torque on the valve is the final straw. The compromised rubber extrudes. It fails. The blowout is instantaneous. It is not a hiss, it is a roar. A catastrophic failure of the high-pressure seal sends a dense curtain of bubbles erupting behind Stephen's head. The sound is deafening, like a jet engine underwater. Stephen is instantly blinded by the chaotic whiteout of escaping gas. But the sound is not the problem. The problem is the air supply. The tank is draining at a rate of 500 liters per minute. The pressure in his regulator hose collapses. Stephen takes a breath and gets nothing but the metallic taste of vacuum. Panic is the true predator in the deep. In a controlled environment, a diver is trained to switch to a backup or share air. But Stephen is not in a classroom. He is deep, blind, and suffocating. The primal survival instinct hijacks his nervous system. Reason evaporates. He does exactly what he was trained never to do. He kicks for the light. He bolts for the surface. He is rocketing upward at 3 meters per second, fueled by pure terror. Mark watches from below, frozen in horror. He realizes his prank has just launched a man into a fatal trajectory. This is where physics delivers the fatal consequence. It is called Boyle's Law. It states that the volume of a gas expands as pressure decreases. As Stephen ascends, the pressure around him drops rapidly. The air trapped inside his lungs begins to expand. If he were exhaling, he would be safe. But in his panic, Stephen holds his breath. The air in his lungs expands to double its volume. The delicate tissue of the alveoli cannot stretch that far. They rupture. Air bubbles force their way into his bloodstream. They travel straight to his heart and brain. This is an arterial gas embolism. By the time Stephen breaks the surface, he is already unconscious. The crew pulls him onto the deck, but it is too late. His brain has suffered a catastrophic stroke. Mark stands on the boat, staring at the body of the man he only wanted to annoy. He tampered with a 10-cent piece of rubber, but he forgot the price of pressure. November 12, 2015, Seattle, Washington. 23-year-old Chloe lives her life trapped inside a fragile glass bubble of constant medical supervision. Her entire existence revolves around avoiding a single fatal spike in her blood pressure. She is a porcelain doll with a terrifying defect, a cerebral aneurysm. It is a thinning balloon-like bulge in an artery at the base of her brain. It is a ticking time bomb kept from detonating only by a strict regimen of potent antihypertensive medications and a low-stress lifestyle. In the shadow of this medical drama stands her younger sister, Maya. At 21, Maya is healthy, invisible, and rotting from the inside out. She watches her parents orbit Chloe like satellites around a dying star. Every headache Chloe has is a family emergency. Every broken nail is a tragedy. Maya's resentment has evolved beyond simple sibling rivalry into a pathological delusion. She has convinced herself that Chloe is a manipulator. Maya believes the aneurysm is real but stable, and that Chloe exaggerates her symptoms to maintain her grip on the family's attention. She thinks the dizzy spells are theater. She thinks the frailty is a performance. Maya decides it is time to force a reality check. She does not want to hurt her sister. She wants to expose her. She wants to prove that Chloe is strong, healthy, and capable of living without being coddled. Her plan is digital, clean, and, in her mind, harmless. Every Friday, Chloe's digital blood pressure logs are uploaded to a secure server and emailed to her neurosurgeon, Dr. Aris. These numbers are the lifeline that dictates her medication dosage. On a rainy Tuesday evening, while Chloe is sleeping, Maya logs into her sister's laptop. She opens the spreadsheet containing the last month's telemetry data. The numbers are concerning, spikes of high pressure that justify the heavy sedation and beta blockers Chloe takes daily. Maya highlights these rows. With a few keystrokes, she overwrites the truth. A reading of 150/95 becomes a textbook 118/75. A dangerous spike becomes a gentle curve. She edits weeks of data, crafting a fictional narrative of perfect cardiovascular health. She does not see herself as a criminal. She is a whistleblower. She believes that when the doctor sees these real numbers, he will realize Chloe is faking her distress. He will cut the meds, Chloe will be fine, and the parents will finally see that their fragile doll is actually made of iron. Maya saves the file, attaches it to the draft email, and clicks send. The lie travels through the fiber optic cables, landing on a specialist's desk miles away. Maya smiles, believing she has just initiated a family intervention. She is critically unaware of the physiological purpose of the drugs she is tampering with. 2 days later, the feedback loop closes. Dr. Aris reviews the logs. He sees a young woman whose blood pressure has inexplicably normalized. In the medical world, treating a patient with normal blood pressure as if they have hypertension is dangerous. It can cause hypotension, fainting, and shock. Trusting the data, the doctor makes a logical, fatal decision. He calls the Miller home and instructs them to taper off the heavy beta blockers immediately. He believes the medication is no longer necessary and might actually be harming her. Maya watches from the stairs as her mother hangs up the phone, tears of joy in her eyes. "She's getting better," the mother says. The doctor says she's stabilizing. For 48 hours, the plan seems to work. Chloe stops the pills. She seems more alert, less lethargic. Maya feels a surge of vindication, but inside Chloe's body, a silent catastrophe is building. The medication was an artificial dam holding back the river of her blood pressure. Without it, the rebound effect begins. The body, accustomed to the chemical suppression, overcompensates. Chloe's blood pressure doesn't just return to its previous high levels, it skyrockets. The force against the arterial walls increases with every beat of her heart. The aneurysm, that thin bubble of tissue in the circle of Willis, begins to stretch. It is like overinflating a balloon that already has a weak spot. Saturday night, the family is watching a movie. The atmosphere is rare and light. The parents are relaxed for the first time in years, believing the danger has passed. Chloe laughs at a joke on the screen. It is a sudden, sharp exhalation. That momentary increase in intracranial pressure is the final straw. The weakened arterial wall reaches its elastic limit. It does not leak. It undergoes a sudden structural failure. The rupture is instantaneous. In clinical terms, it is a subarachnoid hemorrhage. To Chloe, it feels like being struck in the back of the head with a baseball bat. The medical textbooks call it a thunderclap headache. She gasps, her hands flying to her temples. Her eyes go wide, pupils blowing out as severe intracranial pressure overloads the subarachnoid space, compressing the delicate tissue against the skull. She collapses off the sofa before she can even scream. The illusion of health, crafted by Maya's jealousy, shatters in a single second. Chaos erupts. The mother screams. The father scrambles for the phone. Maya freezes. She stands by the doorway, watching the sudden rigidity overtake her sister's body. She looks at the empty pill bottle on the table. The realization hits her with the force of a physical blow. She didn't prove her sister was a liar. She proved that the medicine was the only thing keeping her alive. The paramedics arrive in 6 minutes, but the damage is catastrophic and irreversible. A massive stroke followed by brain death. Maya wanted to strip away the special treatment and reveal the truth. She succeeded. The truth was that Chloe was dying, and Maya, armed with a spreadsheet and envy, reached into her brain and cut the wire that kept the bomb from detonating. September 18, 2003, a converted industrial warehouse in Soho, New York. The cavernous gallery smells of fresh paint, cold steel, and expensive champagne. It is the VIP unveiling of Leviathan, a highly anticipated new work by renowned brutalist sculptor Elias Vance. The room is packed with wealthy collectors, eager art dealers, and fierce critics. They are all waiting to see the master's latest triumph. Standing in the shadows near the catering table is Arthur, his 26-year-old apprentice. Arthur is the invisible pair of hands behind the art. For 5 long years, he has cut the heavy steel, hoisted the jagged stone, and breathed the toxic welding smoke. He sweeps the floors, polishes the metal, and lives on a meager salary, watching Elias sell these pieces for millions. Yet Elias takes all the credit. The master casually dismisses Arthur's own artistic attempts as amateurish and completely derivative. This professional jealousy has slowly mutated into a toxic, burning resentment. Arthur does not want to physically harm the older man. He just wants to destroy his aura of absolute perfection. He wants to watch Elias stand before the city's elite and look like a total fool. This petty desire for public humiliation is about to trigger a catastrophic lesson in structural engineering. Leviathan is a 4-ton geometric beast of welded iron and granite. It does not sit on the floor. It is suspended 10 feet in the air, hanging directly over the center of the room. It is held aloft by 4 high-tension steel cables. Each cable is anchored to heavy-duty turnbuckles drilled deep into the concrete ceiling. Each of the 4 cables carries exactly 2,000 pounds. It is a delicate balance of tension holding a monster in the air. Late last night, while Elias was asleep in his office, Arthur took a metal file to the rear left turnbuckle. He did not cut the cable itself. He simply filed down the steel threads inside the adjustment bolt, compromising about half of the solid metal. His logic was rooted in spite, not physics. He calculated that the sheer weight of the piece would cause the weakened threads to slip just an inch or two during the presentation. The massive sculpture would abruptly tilt downward. It would ruin the perfect symmetry and make Elias look like an incompetent amateur in front of his buyers. Arthur thought he was engineering a harmless prank. He was critically unaware of how dynamic load transfer operates in heavy rigging. The gallery falls silent as Elias walks to the center of the room. He smiles proudly, raising a glass of champagne to the crowd. He steps directly beneath the massive, hovering belly of the Iron Beast to begin his speech. The ambient temperature in the packed room rises. The metal of the sculpture expands microscopically. It is a tiny shift, but it is enough. The compromised threads inside the rear left turnbuckle finally shear off under the immense pressure. There is a sharp cracking sound like a rifle shot echoing through the gallery. The rear left cable whips free. Arthur smiles from the corner, waiting for the awkward tilt. He expects a minor droop. Instead, he witnesses a terrifying mechanical chain reaction. Leviathan weighs 8,000 pounds. When the first cable fails, its 2,000-pound share of the load does not just vanish into thin air. It transfers instantly and violently to the remaining 3 cables. This creates an immediate massive shock load. The center of gravity violently shifts, pulling the entire sculpture sideways and down. The remaining ceiling anchors were designed to hold straight downward weight. They cannot handle a violently swinging diagonal force. The concrete around the right side anchor explodes into a shower of dust. The second cable rips free from the ceiling. The heavy steel structure instantly goes into a catastrophic freefall. The human brain requires a fraction of a second to process unexpected visual data. Elias looks up, the champagne glass still frozen in his hand. He has absolutely no time to move out of the way. The 4-ton mass of iron and granite strikes him directly from above. The impact is absolute. The human body cannot offer any resistance to 8,000 pounds of falling iron. The kinetic energy drives him against the concrete floor with zero deceleration. The clinical outcome is immediate. He suffers catastrophic blunt force trauma to the cranium and thoracic cavity. The massive weight causes instant structural failure of the entire skeletal system. Loss of consciousness is instantaneous, followed immediately by complete cardiac arrest. The sound of the impact shakes the large glass windows of the warehouse. A thick cloud of gray concrete dust billows out across the polished floor, coating the designer shoes of the screaming guests. Arthur stands frozen by the catering table. His champagne glass slips from his trembling fingers and shatters on the ground. He had only wanted to dent a massive ego. He had only wanted to see a genius sweat in front of his wealthy friends. But because he failed to respect the brutal laws of gravity and load distribution, he turned a minor act of professional jealousy into a very public, inescapable fatality. The heavy iron beast rests silently on the floor, perfectly still, while the room descends into absolute chaos. June 5th, 2014. The Angeles Crest Highway, California. Navigating a steep mountain serpentine at high speeds is a delicate, unforgiving physics equation. Survival relies entirely on the mechanical grip of 4 small patches of tire rubber meeting the hot asphalt. Driving upward on this treacherous ribbon of pavement in a heavily modified pickup truck is Jake. He is 22 years old and his hands are gripping the leather steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles are completely white. He is entirely consumed by a dark, suffocating wave of jealousy. His eyes are locked onto the silver sedan driving 50 yards ahead of him. Inside that car is Megan, his ex-girlfriend. She is sitting in the passenger seat next to Chris, a guy she started dating just 3 weeks ago. Jake has been tailgating them for 10 miles. He is not a malicious actor plotting a fatal collision. He does not want to run them off the road. He just wants to assert his dominance. He wants to terrify the new guy, force the smaller sedan onto the dusty shoulder, and demand a confrontation. He wants to make Chris look weak and foolish in front of Megan. However, vehicle safety on a steep curve relies entirely on the smooth transfer of weight. If a driver jerks the steering wheel or slams the brakes suddenly, the weight of the car shifts too fast. The tires lose their vital friction, and the 2-ton machine becomes an unguided missile. Jake is not thinking about physics or friction. He is only thinking about his deeply wounded pride. He aggressively downshifts his transmission. The heavy truck engine roars and he presses the accelerator pedal to the floor. The massive vehicle surges forward, closing the gap in seconds. They are rapidly approaching a notorious hairpin turn, known for its blind entry and steep, unprotected drop-off. The posted speed limit here is 30 miles per hour, but they are doing over 60. Jake pulls his truck into the oncoming lane, completely ignoring the double yellow line. He pulls up parallel to the silver sedan. He looks through the glass and can clearly see Chris's eyes wide with sheer panic. Jake smirks. He violently turns his steering wheel to the right, cutting back into their lane just inches from their front bumper. Then he taps his brakes just enough to flash his bright red taillights. It is a classic aggressive brake check maneuver. It is meant to be a harsh, intimidating warning. But Jake has fundamentally failed to calculate the fragile psychology of a startled, inexperienced driver. When a person is suddenly cut off on a dangerous mountain curve, the human brain bypasses logical thought entirely. It instantly triggers a primal flinch response. Chris does exactly what his terrified survival instincts scream at him to do. He violently jerks his steering wheel to the right to avoid hitting the massive rear bumper of Jake's truck. At the exact same fraction of a second, he slams his foot as hard as he can onto the brake pedal. This is a fatal mechanical combination. Hitting the brakes forcefully throws all the car's weight violently onto the front two tires. The rear tires instantly lift upward, entirely losing their crucial grip on the hot asphalt. The sedan snaps into a sudden, uncontrollable slide. This phenomenon is known as lift-off oversteer. Chris has completely lost all steering control. The tires scream loudly, leaving thick black streaks of burning rubber across the pavement as the car skids sideways. It completely misses the narrow dirt shoulder. There is no metal guardrail to stop them. The vehicle launches smoothly off the unprotected edge of the cliff. Time artificially dilates. For 3 terrifying silent seconds, the sedan is completely airborne, plummeting down into the rocky ravine. The impact is absolute and catastrophic. The car strikes the solid granite floor of the canyon, 60 feet below. The immense kinetic energy of the fall instantly crushes the vehicle's structural frame inward. The massive deceleration forces are entirely incompatible with human biology. The extreme sudden deceleration produces fatal kinetic energy transfer into the cabin. They sustain non-survivable internal hemorrhaging and critical spinal trauma. Loss of motor function and consciousness is immediate, followed rapidly by terminal respiratory failure. The safety belts and airbags deploy perfectly as designed, but they are utterly useless against the raw, unyielding laws of gravity and solid rock. Up on the highway, Jake slams his truck to a screeching halt. He steps out onto the quiet, sun-baked asphalt. The harsh smell of burnt rubber hangs heavily in the dry mountain air. He walks slowly to the edge of the cliff. His burning anger is entirely gone, instantly replaced by a cold, paralyzing dread. He looks down at the crumpled, smoking wreckage far below. He had only wanted to prove a point to a romantic rival. He had only wanted to use his heavy truck to throw a jealous tantrum and scare them. But because he ignored the immutable laws of inertia and human panic, he engineered a completely avoidable tragedy. The quiet hum of the mountain wind returns to the canyon, ignoring the shattered steel at the bottom. October 12, 2012, the bustling marina in Newport, Rhode Island. 32-year-old Thomas is a sailing prodigy who navigates the world's most dangerous oceans with absolute fearless confidence. He trusts his instincts, but above all, he trusts the glowing digital screens of his electronic instruments. It is the tense evening before a brutal solo endurance regatta, and Thomas stands proudly on the deck of his 40-foot racing yacht. Thomas is the undisputed favorite to win. He is wealthy, charismatic, and fearless on the water. Watching him quietly from a dark slip 2 rows away is Eric. Eric is 35 and a highly skilled sailor, but he is a man who has spent his entire career finishing in second place. He is exhausted by the suffocating weight of his own jealousy. Eric does not want to fatally harm his younger rival. He simply wants to inflict a humiliating, frustrating defeat. He wants Thomas to get lost in the dark, lose precious hours, and cross the finish line dead last. This petty desire to ruin a reputation is about to collide with the unforgiving reality of maritime navigation. Before the race begins, under the cover of darkness, Eric steps quietly onto Thomas's empty boat. He climbs down into the narrow, dimly lit navigation station. His target is the yacht's primary GPS chart plotter. In the featureless expanse of the open ocean, a solo sailor relies entirely on this glowing screen for survival. Eric quickly accesses the deep calibration menu. He adjusts the electronic compass offset by exactly 2 degrees. It is an incredibly subtle change. To the naked eye, the digital heading looks perfectly normal, but ocean navigation is a strict science of compounding geometry. The math is brutal. A 1-degree error over 60 miles puts a boat exactly 1 mile off course. Over the 150-mile offshore leg of this race, Eric's tiny 2-degree deviation will physically push the yacht more than 5 miles away from its intended route. Eric calculates that Thomas will simply miss the first deep water turning buoy. He thinks Thomas will get confused, waste time sailing in circles, and lose the race. Eric saves the malicious setting and slips back into the cold night. He is critically unaware of the specific ocean floor geography along the 3rd leg of the route. He completely forgets about the devil's teeth. This is a notorious, jagged granite reef hidden just 3 feet beneath the ocean surface. The race committee carefully plotted a safe, narrow channel right past it. Thomas's original route would have kept him safely in deep water. 2 days later, the trap finally closes. It is 2 a.m. on the open ocean. A severe gale has moved in, bringing torrential rain and 30-knot winds. Visibility is absolute zero. Thomas is sailing through a terrifying wall of black water. He is pushing his yacht hard, surfing down massive ocean swells at a dangerous speed of 15 knots. Because he cannot see the dark horizon, he trusts his electronic instruments completely. The mechanical autopilot is steering the boat through the storm, taking its orders directly from the poisoned GPS data. Thomas is standing in the cockpit, believing he is navigating the safe channel. He is actually steering directly into the deadly reef. The kinetic energy of a 10-ton yacht moving at 15 knots is immense. When the solid lead keel strikes the submerged granite wall of the Devil's Teeth, the vessel does not simply run aground. It stops instantly. The violent deceleration goes from 15 knots to 0 in a fraction of a second. The heavy mast snaps violently in half like a dry twig. Down in the cockpit, the sudden stop transfers all of that forward momentum directly into Thomas's body. He is violently thrown forward against the heavy steel steering binnacle. The deceleration is absolute. Thomas sustains a catastrophic kinetic strike to the cranium against the steel steering binnacle. The localized blunt force causes irreversible neurological destruction. Brain death occurs within milliseconds, permanently halting his cardiopulmonary system before he can even register the pain. He never even sees the jagged rocks that claim his life. The safety harness keeps him secured inside the boat, but it cannot protect him from the unforgiving laws of physics. Back in Newport, Eric waits near the finish line, eagerly expecting to see his rival's humiliating delay. He waits for hours in the rain. The Coast Guard eventually finds the shattered remains of the racing yacht the next morning. The hull is cracked completely open, grinding heavily against the cold stone. Inside the flooded cabin, the GPS screen is still glowing faintly under the dark water. Eric only wanted to steal a plastic trophy to satisfy his burning envy. Instead, his 2-degree adjustment engineered a fatal shipwreck in the pitch black. The victims trusted their equipment, completely unaware that a jealous shadow had rigged the game. Who carries the ultimate blame here? The arrogant victim who failed to double-check their own safety gear, or the coward who altered it in the dark? Debate it in the comments. I read every single one. If you want more unfiltered reality, drop a like and subscribe right now.